It's Friday, and you know what that means. Jason the Bruce here with Getting Tabled, bringing you another product opening. Now, this is all AK Interactive. This is all from their third generation acrylic line that was launched 6-ish months ago. And for the record, this is all stuff I paid with my own money. I mentioned a couple of months ago that I'd been tossing up whether to buy and try out some of these or not. There was a rather controversial thing that AK Interactive did and have since apologised for that made me question whether I was going to or not. But look, at the end of the day, this is a product that I want to try out because I'd like to give an honest opinion of. Now, this is something that has been reviewed by quite a lot of people, bigwigs, some people I've never heard of. So I want to try and do a couple of interesting things. Now, first things first, why have I purchased the things that I have? These 6 paints here in the background, that is actually the flesh tone set, but it didn't come in the box. The store within Australia, the Combat Company, that I purchased these from, sold out of these in like a day. But I purchased the individual paints initially as I added them to my cart as a curiosity to see how much more expensive it would be. It was only $1 more expensive to buy these separately than it was to buy them in the box. So, the big question I'm sure you're asking is, what do you get in the box? Now, when you buy box sets from Vallejo and stuff, it's usually just a box, and you will probably get like a tips on how to use the paints. Some of them are written by most of them are written by fairly significant people, but they're fairly basic. The Angel Heraldez ones that I've read in the past certainly do not compare with the book that he released, for example. In this, however, all you get is, you get a nice pretty box that shows you it being used. And they come in this, I guess it's supposed to be a painting tray. But that's it. So, my advice to you is that if you're wanting the colours in the boxes, you're only buying them because you're saving money. This is not much use to you. I believe both of mine are cracked. This is really thin. It's not something that's ever going to last you. But it's also not why you brought it. So, this is the Inferno box. I purchased this because one of the things I'm doing this year is rebuilding my Blood Angels. And I thought, well, why not? In saying that, I don't know if this is what I'll actually end up using to paint them. I may end up going another route. But it was still a why not, because it's still something to look at. And rust. Now, I actually do have a very simple rust paint from the Army Painter that I purchased with the intention to use for Gaslands. It's never been opened at this point. I assume it's still fine. But the last time I did 40k, I never actually weathered any of my stuff. Mainly because, I don't know, I just had this idea. Everybody always talked about how easy it was, but I was just kind of like, I don't want to ruin the work that I've done. Most of my stuff looked horrible anyway. Well, I think it looked horrible. Alan, if you're seeing this, I know I shouldn't have a go at my painting. But, yeah, so I'm buying this because I actually do want to do some decent weathering this time, and I'd like it to look good. This one actually comes with a chipping paint. That is, a chocolate chipping paint. I have not been able to find any instructions as to how this paint is supposed to work, not even on their official website. So my first criticism is even if this is stuff that should be very, very simple that most people would understand, you should probably be giving instructions on technical paints. I know it's just a chipping paint, but this is a product that's going to be purchased eventually by someone that is new to the hobby, and you really should be putting more work in than this, especially if it's someone that's gone out and bought a box. The fact that AK Interactive have nothing on their YouTube, not even a description of how the paint works on their website, there is nothing on this at all. Nothing to tell you how it's supposed to work. Nothing to tell you anything at all. So that is, I feel, a very massive oversight by a company that should know better. I'm not expecting them to make hour-long presentations of every paint that they have. But when it's a paint that actually has a function like this, like I said, there's people that's going to purchase sets like this that are new to the hobby. And when it's companies that specialize in teaching people how to do things, I expect more from a company like this. That's probably the only massive criticism I have so far. In saying that, I also haven't opened any of these. Now, I'm going to go through a couple of things that you probably know already. The first thing you will have noticed is the lid design. I actually really like this. It's a point of difference. It's a nice, easy thing to grip and turn. And I know that everybody has pointed this out. I have a suspicion that the sponsored versions of these videos probably had it as a talking point that had to be mentioned, because every single review of the ones that I saw got sent paints out by AK Interactive mentioned this and went on about it for ages. But I actually really do like this. It's something that a lot of people do with the Vallejo Paints anyway, which is literally put a dot of paint in there so that you eventually know what the final colour is. I haven't done it on any of mine yet. In fact, I didn't even do it then, just because I just haven't got to that. I'm really excited about trying these paints. Like I said, I'm not 100% certain if I'm going to end up using these for my Blood Angels or not, but given that I was making an order, I wanted to justify the postage costs a bit easier, so I added it in and then kind of rethought about it afterwards, realising that maybe I shouldn't have done that. The reason I say I maybe shouldn't have done that is I am considering using contrast to some extent. I don't want to do a full contrast army, but speeding up a couple of the processes, and one of those processes would be the red. But this is the point of the video where I'm going to try and do a couple of things that are a little bit different. So, I'm going to put the rust paint away, because that's not the one that I'm going to do my thing with. A point on the colours. The yellow ones are your intensive paints, so they're supposed to be like really, really heavily pigmented. So I'm going to just pick a very, very basic paint. So I'm going to pick the beige skin tone and the light flesh. Oh, this light flesh I purchased because I wanted a bright flesh colour. Everything else can kind of be put to the side for the moment. Now, everybody has gone on about how apparently you don't need paint agitators in these, and about how the paint apparently does not separate. Personally, I don't believe that for a second. The agitators, look, you don't necessarily need agitators in every paint that you buy. I don't actually have any in any of my paints at the moment. They certainly help, though. But the claim that these will never separate, I find that very hard to believe. I mean, I could believe that maybe they won't separate quickly, and that may take a while. But due to the very nature of how paints work, if this sits here for 6 months, I'm going to come back and it will be separated. That is just pure fact. But this stuff is supposed to be insanely thick, which I don't know how much that's coming across on the microphone, but it certainly does sound thick. So I'm curious to actually see how thick it is myself. So it doesn't seem too bad. Now, it is actually quite thick. But I haven't watered this down at all. And I've done that on purpose. And also, let's be honest, painting onto your skin is not probably the easiest surface to paint either, but that's just flowing really, really easily. Let's actually do that. You are actually supposed to just drop it in there, but I'm kind of playing around a little bit. But, I mean, there are Citadel paints that are thicker than this. As I said, I've literally just picked a random colour. There's no real main reason as to why I picked the flesh. I mean, flesh colours aren't the most unreliable colours. But I was still very interested. Hypothetically, because obviously you would want to water this down to some extent. And then that's still really nice and opaque. Again, like, painting on your skin is not something that I'd be recommending. I mean, this is just stupid, but I was deliberately painting on something that was difficult to paint on. But that's actually got some decent opacity to it. This is the one that I watered down, so you can see my skin a little easier through that one than you can this one. This is obviously massively thick, but I don't know how well it's going to show up. You haven't lost any of the detail on my skin there, really. Apart from the paint hasn't gone into that wrinkle, but I think that's actually just the way I was holding my hand. And, I mean, the human skin in some areas would be finer than most miniatures are. Don't do this. It's a pain to get off your skin. Look, most acrylics are not actually toxic these days, but it's just really bad for you. Just don't do it. I am an idiot for doing it. Alright, let's have a look at this one. So again, that's actually flowing quite nicely. Let's highlight up my skin. Yes, I know I haven't watered it down. Like I said, I'm doing this on purpose. Because reasons. I am deliberately trying to make this as difficult for the paint as I can. Is why I'm doing it that way. This is not how you would highlight up somebody's hand, but I'm just kind of picking some spots. Alright, now let's water it down. And let's highlight really, really poorly. I'm not going to lie. I mean, I'm... That's a fairly light colour. And it's a flesh tone, not a white. So it's not going to be... It's not the most unreliable of colours, but it's certainly not one that's notoriously easy to use. But they flow... Considering the stories of how thick these are supposed to have been... Now, I do expect that there will be parts of the line that'll be thicker than others. But given the stories of how thick this was supposed to be... Because everybody was saying that this was really thick, almost as thick as Citadel, but flowed much, much easier. I mean, the flowing of this puts Citadel paints to shame. Especially, I mean, if you have a colour like Mephiston Red, you can almost hold it upside down and it'll stay in the pot. Not quite, but you can almost do that with some paints. I haven't really needed to shake that too much. But these have been getting shaken around anyway. No, I'm actually impressed with this line. Time will tell how the rest of the line holds up. I'm definitely keen to try out some more of this. In the same order, I did get some Vallejo paints as well, because one of the things I intend to do for my Frostgrave stuff, watchers of the channel may remember that I opened up some miniatures from Eureka Miniatures, which is some Australian Aboriginals, which they call the Denotians. I intend to try and paint those as faithfully as I can. I have found a couple of painting recipes on the internet which basically tell me colours but not how to use them, so I'm going to have to kind of go by eye with this, but that's going to be a more long-term plan, because I'm going to try and paint this up to be much more in depth than I normally would. I normally do like the 3 or 4 tones and then just blend it. I'm going to actually try. There's actually a number of these paints that'll go into that recipe as well. But I'm going to leave it at that for now. I hope you enjoyed the unique approach that I tried to do with this. Like I said, I was deliberately trying to do this in a difficult way, because this not only shows you how thick the paint is, but how well it flows as well. You can still see all of the texture of my skin there, even in up here, which says a lot, really. OK Interactive, at least at first glance, have a product that a number of companies should be very concerned about, I think. It's got a huge range. Not everything is available in the box sets, but that's fine, because not all Vallejo stuff is either. But this is a line that potentially could make some real damage to some other companies. Yeah. OK Interactive had not been around for a small amount of time, but that's... I mean, AK Interactive have genuinely stepped their product forward in a significant way. Vallejo haven't really done anything new in paints for a while. I mean, I know they did their shifters, but that's not new. The contrast was new-ish from Games Workshop. I mean, this is essentially just an acrylic paint. I mean, I'm not saying that this is the number one product on the market. I haven't used it enough to know that. But this is impressive enough that the other companies should probably start looking at their lines again. Because there's only so much room on those shelves. And although AK Interactive aren't on as many shelves as Vallejo and Citadel are, they've got a product that's worth being on there. Yeah, I think I'll leave my thoughts at that. The audio clip at the start of this video was spoken in tribute to the passing of John Huber, also known as Brodie Lee and Luke Harper.